Hi, friends. George Soros. If you are preparing for an MBA interview, a dream job interview, or even for your corporate internal interviews, George Soros, that is one name that you can't afford to ignore. There are numerous reasons why suddenly George Soros has become the flavor of the season. And in this video, right here, we are going to explain to you everything that you need to know about George Soros as to who is he, why is this person so popular? Why is this person so successful? And why is this person so controversial? And thereafter, what should Indian government do about this sudden crisis which has got accelerated because of George Soros? My name is Gagan Singh, and we will be here training you on recruitment processes, your corporate jobs, your interviews, GDs. If you like this video, then please press the like button, subscribe button. And today, let us talk about George Soros. So, first of all, why even talk about George Soros? And the answer is evident that just last week at the Munich Security Council, this person had the audacity to make three allegations on the NDA government. First of all, by linking it to the Adani Hindenburg imbroglio, he spoke about the government being silent on the Adani issue. Secondly, he had the temerity to demand that the government would have to answer not just to the parliament but to the foreign investor. So he's suddenly trying to create a situation where he's the representative of the foreign investors. And thirdly, which was a very offensive accusation that this episode and the weakening of Adani would eventually lead to weakening of Modi government's stranglehold on India. Remember this word, stranglehold. And therefore, he says finally that there'll be revival of democracy. Ooh, so much so far so good, as if he right there is judging whether we are a vibrant democracy or not. So these are the reasons which have made him very notoriously ill-famous in India right now. And thereafter, the government across various forums, our external affairs minister, our women and child development minister, have at various forums given befitting rebuttals. So now, let us in this video try to explain you 5 things. Number 1, who is George Soros? Number 2, why is he so relevant? Number 3, what are the notorious things about him? Number 4, what are the specific implications of his accusation on India? And number 5, what should the government do to make sure that a befitting response is given? So let's begin. Number 1, who's George Soros? So George Soros is a 92-year-old billionaire who was born in the country Hungary, Budapest in 1930. He's a businessman and a proclaimed philanthropist. Now, he was born in 1930 in Budapest, and as you would all know, that was the period when World War II, the signs of World War II were brimming. He is basically a German Jew. His parent name was Schwarz. Then, in late 30s, his family changed the surname from Schwarz to Soros to avoid being noticed as a prominent Jew. Now, in 1944, as we all know, Hungary was invaded and occupied by Nazi Germany, and that's the period when George Soros and his family had to really scrapple around to be saved from the risk of Nazi Germany's rage. Now, that has probably shaped his persona to a great extent, that he's a survivor. He's a survivor and therefore has had feelings which are quite anti those who oppress. Thereafter, in 1947, he relocated to UK, where he pursued his undergraduation and post-graduation in philosophy from nowhere else but the elite London School of Economics. Thereafter, he moved on to US and became a famous hedge fund investment bank manager and started a fund called Double Eagle. That's where his saga started. And his story became more successful because he was definitely proficient and really perspicacious at investment banking, predominantly as a short seller. And therefore, over a career which spans, as of now, more than 50 years, he has accumulated about $40 billion of wealth. Yes, $40 billion, about 3.5 lakh crore. But we'll come to that in a bit more. So we can try to paraphrase him as a survivor who fought against the oppressive forces and escaped, then studied philosophy to become liberal at heart and became an investment banker, a really sagacious and brilliant one who leveraged various opportunities to amass wealth to the tune of about $40 billion. Now, all of this, picture somebody who's definitely old, who's likely to be opinionated, who's extremely rich, but our external affairs minister says also dangerous. Now, why do we call him dangerous? For that, it's important to understand point 2. What are the significant economic accomplishments of George Soros? Now, the first great accomplishment which earned him the very ungratifying sobriquet of being the man who broke the Bank of England. Now, this happened in 1992, September 16th, which is also called the Black Wednesday. That's the time when, because George Soros took a very heavy short selling position in the UK pound, on that one day, the UK pound fell so badly that entire United Kingdom had to exit out of European ERM, that exchange rate mechanism. So one man was the architect of letting an entire country get thrown out of the European Union exchange rate mechanism. In that 1 month in September 92, he is stated to have earned about 1.5 billion pounds way back then. about 30 years back, and therefore got this very notorious title of the man who broke the Bank of England. Definitely genius, definitely brilliant, but equally dangerous. The second vital accomplishment he did was in 1997, when the very ill famous Southeast Asian currency crisis happened, which absolutely shattered the economies of countries such as Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, Vietnam, and even South Korea. In fact, a big part of Asia really took more than half a decade to recover from the Southeast Asian crisis. And George Soros taking position by once again short selling the various currencies such as Thai baht, Malaysian ringgit were said to be a very vital force in having accelerated the Southeast Asian economic currency crisis. So much so that the Malaysian Prime Minister then, Mr. Mahathir, accused George Soros and his company of having accelerated the crisis. Of course, later on he denied and stated that when the currencies were falling in 97, his organization was actually a buyer, but then that is something which is an argument to and for. The third vital thing to this man's resume is the subprime crisis. Now, it is stated that he was one of the first brilliant visionaries who could see this crisis happening, which took place in 2008 in USA when the real estate was in a bubble mode. So George Soros used his theory of reflexivity to predict that there is a cause and effect relationship. The more the bankers are lending, the more the buyers are buying, and therefore the property price is rising. So it's a cause and effect helping each other grow. That's the prediction that he made. And of course, the subprime crisis happened. And there again, probably as a position, he would have made moolah. During his career, there were other allegations, such as the bank in France, where Societe Generale France made an accusation about insider trading. Well, not many of them were established. So all in all, the journey as an investment banker, as a hedge fund trader, was essentially towards short selling. Probably an opposite mirror reflection of Warren Buffett, who typically would go long. George Soros has arguably made most of the money by creating disruption through short selling. And of course, he has done very good job of it because his total accumulation would have been about $40 billion. So this is the very notorious profile of this man when it comes to economics. Now, third, let us talk about his political lineage, his political ideology, and his actions. Now, you may wonder that how come a businessman is focusing on politics? How much is this person focusing on social, expansionist, inclusive growth philosophy? And the answer to that is given by a title which was conferred to him by the Forbes magazine. And here, the numbers are very important. Forbes magazine has classified George Soros as the greatest giver. Take note, the greatest giver ever. Why? Because of the $40 billion that he has accumulated, he has already given away $32 billion. So his worth today as an individual is about $8 billion. A staggering 80%, which tantamounts to something which is roughly of the order of about 2.5 to 3 lakh crore. This is George Soros for you, ladies and gentlemen, and this is precisely what makes him very dangerous. Somebody who accumulates wealth, of course, becomes powerful, but if somebody is ready to give away wealth in order to accomplish his or her ideology, then that person can be very dangerous. Now, let us understand George Soros' ideology. Now, he has set up a foundation called Open Society Foundation, and its stated mission is to help expansion of vibrant and active democracy globally. So they encourage creation of inclusive, tolerant, divergent society. Well, by the sound of it, looks all good, nothing bad about it. But then why has it been controversial? It's been controversial because towards pursuit of this mission, the Open Society Foundation, which was formed about 30 years back, over the last 30 years, it has spread to about 70 countries. And in a bulk of these countries, it has very questionable antecedents. Starting from the country where George Soros was born, Hungary, where this organization is prohibited, then Macedonia, then Italy, thereafter countries like China, Russia, Israel, and of course now in India also, this organization, Open Society Foundation, is under severe watch list. Now, what is it that is making it in such a controversial position? To understand that, basically let us explain you George Soros' ideology. Now, in his belief to create an open, vibrant, inclusive democracy, he has chosen the path of an antagonist negativity towards anyone who's conservative. A self-proclaimed ideology which may have found roots in the oppressive forces of Nazi Germany in 1944, which he suffered at the childhood age, which makes him feel that anybody which is fighting towards conservatism, nationalism, is an enemy of the world, is an enemy of the global order. To that effect, this man has waged a war by helping the spread of vibrant democracy, not just through positive means, but through actively campaigning against governments. That's where one more reason this person becomes very dangerous. Now, let's move to point 4, that what are the controversial political things which make it very tricky for India. Imagine taking the names of Chinese Premier Xi Jinping, Russian Premier Putin, Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu, Indian Premier Narendra Modi, and formerly the US President Donald Trump. What is common among these 5? Well, maybe there may be common things or not. However, one common thing is that they have all been at the receiving end of the stick of George Soros. He has called Xi Jinping as the greatest danger to open societies. He has been very critical of Russia, specifically Putin, ever since the Crimea acquisition and more recently after the Ukrainian invasion. He has been critical of Israel. He has been critical of various other countries. Of course, at his home ground in USA, he's been critical of Donald Trump, which is of course reflected in funding billions of dollars to the cause of Democrats, including supporting Obama, more recently Joe Biden. But the question is, what's his problem with India? Now, if we go about 3 years back, he gave an extremely controversial statement about the Citizenship Amendment Act, where he said that the nationalist Modi government is trying to deprive the Muslims in semi-autonomous region of Kashmir a legitimate right to their citizenship. What a controversial statement to make. What a condescending statement to make. And then more recently, just last week at the Munich conference, he made that accusation where he was linking Modi government to Adani, thereafter going on to state that the weakening of Adani would weaken Modi government, and Modi government would have to answer to foreign investors and, of course, to Indian parliament. And this weakening would probably lead to revival of democracy. And this allegation becomes otherwise not so consequential, but now very consequential because it's being made by somebody who not just has a lot of wealth, but is ready to shower this wealth to propagate a cause against an existing government. He has had these various hands in various countries which were probably influential in working towards certain political causes, and there is a serious risk that he could do the same thing in India. Now, what is important here to understand is that whether you're a Modi government supporter or an opposer, the danger for India is as follows. And there are 3 important dangers. Number 1, someone who's sitting in the cushy, luxurious C-suites at Manhattan, New York, in the United States, considers himself prudent enough to make a case that India is not a democracy which is vibrant enough. Number 2, not just opinion, he starts expressing this opinion across the world. Then number 3, he starts spending money through his Open Society Foundation to instigate sentiments which are against this particular government initiative. That, my friends, makes this person quite controversial and dangerous. And therefore, it's very important that in your MBA interviews, in your corporate dream job interviews, when you are asked such a question, you have to give a very dispassionate and balanced answer. Because if you don't answer it in a dispassionate and in a balanced manner, then the jury may think that you are very opinionated. So the most important last part here is, what should Modi government do about it? And for that, it's important to understand that while other allegations can be ignored, like Winston Churchill once said, if you stop to keep fighting with every barking dog, you will never reach your destination. So George Soros is not your average run-of-the-mill barking dog. He's somebody who's opinionated, who's rich, and who's very influential, powerful, and therefore dangerous. So in some sense, it's probably a political move also, whereby using his big pockets, using his commitment to philanthropy, he's likely to soon create activism which may enter into supporting the opposition parties towards helping rallying the oppositions and create a force which is formidable against NDA government. So I'm not going to the political part. Once again, I'm repeating. However, the last part, which is very important to be understood, is that how does a nation react to this? So for this, there are 3 important things that the government must do. Number 1, the government must try to take positive verbal campaign to try and counter-attack this kind of statements of Mr. George Soros, proving him to be malafide. This step has already started and many ministers have made statements. However, this is not sufficient. It's important to take through the right kind of governmental means, maybe talk to the US counterpart or talk to your external affair counterparts, that such rebellious voices which have no bona fide locus standi need to be asked to be contained. However, third and most important is that it is our work which should do the task. India is on the path to become world's 3rd largest power. It could really happen over the next about 1.5 decade. Therefore, nothing can allow us to be derailed right now. So if at the end of an interview you are asked, what are your views on George Soros? Then please reply something like this. Sure, sir. Happy to answer that. I believe that George Soros is a very rich businessman who's also a philanthropist, as the Forbes magazine considers him to be one of the greatest givers. However, in my sincere view, someone who's sitting in the cushy offices in New York is not really in a position to make lofted claims about how India is running its democracy. So to that extent, his open criticism of Indian government tantamounts to nothing but a great accusation and affront to our great country, India. I would therefore really believe that not just the Indian government, but various global bodies and the United States see it in their sense to try and convey a message that the statements of George Soros are ill-founded. However, since the person is a break giver, so there are going to be many followers. Therefore, in India, it's important for government to keep a society on the alert list and, of course, keep doing good liberal democratic work so that any maleficent forces can never be successful. So give a balanced and neutral answer like this. So I hope that the video was helpful for all of you. If you've liked it, then please press the subscribe button and stay tuned for more videos to help you ace your GD's interviews.